Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Man's Hour, episode 43 on the Europe trip. I am joined by Zara. Oh, my God. I'm tired today. I am very tired today. Very grueling and horrible day at work today. But fresh off of a nice episode of Culture Warriors with the gang, Mr. Napier and Mr. Megatron. We had good fun. You guys should go over and definitely check that out. We got a whole playlist on the channel here of the Culture Warriors episodes with me and the two guys, and we talk about a lot of fun stuff there. It's like the fun part of the manosphere, basically. So definitely you guys should stop on over, check us out, what we're doing over there. But this is going to be a after action report of the Europe trip. There's going to be tales, great tales of bar fights, of dinosaur bones, of hiking, of pickpockets, of based friends, the whole 9 yards. It's going to be a lot of fun. So basically, I was over in Europe for the first time in my life. I've been there once before as a connection flight. Like I flew into Amsterdam on my way to Africa. So I count it as like I've never been there. I never stepped outside the airport, never saw the buildings, never saw the culture, the history, the people, nothing at all. So this really was the first time I'd actually been over there in my entire life. And I was there for 15 days. And I went to, 5 countries, across the continent. Spread myself kind of a little thin on this trip. I think next time I'm going to go over there, I'm definitely going to, fixate on one country as opposed to, hopping around to like 5 different ones and things like this. So I was trying to treat it like the United States, so you could kind of just drive around and see a bunch of stuff and move to the next one. But it's not really like that. My experience being that I would have hated life if I was driving a car over there. Like the speed limit signs are, like 50 miles an hour max on most of the roads. I know there's like the, what the hell's the German one? The Autobahn or whatever they call it, where there's like no speed limit, but even still. And then when I got to England, oh man, I can't imagine driving on those roads after driving, all this time on American roads, being on the correct side of the road, you Brits. Funny enough, I'll get to that story, but when Mark, not so obvious, picked me up at the train station and I got in his car, I tried to get in on the passenger side, i.e., the right side for American ones, and lo and behold, there's a steering wheel there, and I was confused almost instantly. I was like, oh, right, you guys do things opposite over here for some stupid reason. So basically what I felt like I would do here is kind of just start at the very beginning of the trek, go all the way through, kind of give my thoughts and opinions as to how the trip went, and some very interesting insights that I had, being an American heading over like abroad for the first time, and the things like I'd pick up, things that I thought I'd see, things I didn't really see, and just kind of like the culture shock, for lack of a better word. So it should be fun. But basically, I'm going to use like my Twitter as a guide here, because if anyone was following my Twitter, they'll see that I was posting a great deal of photos and stuff as I was rolling around. So let me add that to the stream here. Let's make myself smaller. There we go. Put myself right there. Perfect. Fantastic. All right. So funny enough, when I got off the plane and I checked into the Airbnb with some buddies in downtown Paris, was the first place we started. And it's interesting when you're walking around downtown and there's a bunch of like art expos and things like this. And I saw this one and I just had to take a picture of it because it looks so much like Mr. D's like profile pics that he uses. And oh man, it's so funny. So I had to take a picture of it and send it to Mr. D. He was like, D, someone took your profile pic and updated it, and they're doing an an art expo in your honor. So oh hey Kate in the chat. I might be coming out of Texas later this year, definitely early next year, for sure. So I'll definitely be in Texas within 365 days. So I don't know, maybe I will come down and visit. We'll get some sushi or something like that, even though I fucking hate sushi. I'm very particular with my fish, as we'll go over here when I had a fish dinner in Marseille in South France. But yeah, so I spent a couple days in Paris. I was over there with a bunch of my buddies. We had a good time. We shacked up at a Airbnb in downtown Paris for a couple of days, and just like good old times. And naturally, of course, had to see the Eiffel Tower. Saw it at night. We took like one of those little river cruises that you could do, which I guess the first thing I will comment on right here is I was amazed how like cheaper things were in Europe than they were in the States. And much of this is because of like the different taxes and everything like this, but it's interesting when you go over to Europe, everything is just a solid, number amount for everything you buy. Everything's €3, everything's 350, everything's like four. There's no like when you go to like an American store, all the taxes are rolled up into it. So like everything you buy in America is like 362 or two like 28 or whatever the hell it is, with the tax added. So it was interesting how everyone's just always carrying around like exact bills and exact coins, and that's how they pay for a bunch of stuff. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, this river cruise ticket was like $15. It was like for an hour and a half, and they just take you up and down the rivers of Paris, past all of the the monuments, past like Champs-Élysées, past the Louvre, past obviously the Eiffel Tower and Notre Dame and all these kinds of things. And that was actually really nice. And again, I was shocked as to how, cheap things were over there compared to America, especially alcohol. Like a glass of wine or a pint of beer or things like this, super, super cheap over there, especially when I got to England. Like, I'll have more to say about like English pub culture and how much I really appreciate it when I get there. But yeah, a pint of Guinness for £3, is ridiculous. Like over here in the States, it'd be like $6 easily, no matter where you go. So I was amazed as to like, how much just cheaper everything was over there. So very interesting on that regard. But yeah, so spent a couple days in Paris. Obviously, here's some pictures of Arc de Triomphe, which is just so based that Napoleon Bonaparte just commissioned this to get built in celebration of all his amazing victories. Quite the military genius that he was. But yeah, I really liked this walk down Champs-Élysées is the street that they call it here. So you can walk from Arc de Triomphe down the street all the way to the Louvre, which is pretty cool. And there's an obelisk at the way end here. You can't really see in this photo, but there's an obelisk, and then obviously the famous Louvre art museum where they have like the Mona Lisa and all that stuff. And they have some beautiful gardens all through there that were really nice to walk. My impression of Paris when I was like going there, I was expecting like the streets should just be overflow with shit and Moroccans just all over the fucking place. And it definitely, like, there definitely was some of that, but in like the major like touristy areas and such like that, not really. I found it to be much cleaner than an American city, so that was a breath of fresh air at least. And it's just, the architecture is just so different compared to in the States. I mean, there's buildings that are obviously like hundreds upon hundreds of years old. I mean, and then when you get to Notre Dame, it was like construction was started in the 1200s, like many times over older than, the entire United States. It's just a totally different feeling, heading over there. You can just feel like the history like in the air, I guess is a way to describe it. And, the French are very, aristocratic people, I'd say the least. They enjoy their vice, they enjoy their leisure. I mean, obviously, like the joke that we always have is like the French will riot if they have to work more than 2 days a week, which funny enough, I was there May 1st, which is, Commie Day, May Day. And of course, riots broke out, between the French and the police and everything like that, so indeed, I had to make a little joke at Mr. D, the stepping out to see the Latin Quarter. Funny if anyone gets that, but oh yeah, the funny statue in one of these gardens and such. But yeah, so these are like the gardens surrounding the Louvre here, of course. And of course, there's plenty of nice women, there that I had to take pictures of and, tweet out and everything. But yeah, these gardens here, like this palace surrounding the Louvre right now, a section of it burnt down. I think it's like something like the 17 or 1800s or something like that. But it's just massive. We have nothing like this in America. These huge like hedge gardens that are well maintained, these giant palaces all the way around, big courtyards, I could definitely understand how people would be, like, I'm not a big city person, I mean, I like my country, I like my acreage, but I can understand why people have different, feelings about cities in Europe. There's so much history there. There's statues that are, hundreds of years old commemorating like famous people, artists, famous battles and victories and things like this. Like, I can understand why you would be inspired, living in a great city like this, seeing these great works of art, and I would honestly like welcome more of this in the States. I mean, they're tearing down all the Confederate monuments like down south, which is bullshit. But, like, I could understand like why the state would invest money in like public works projects and things like this. Like, you should have pride in your people, and you should have pride in your greatness and, your glory and things like this. And the French definitely have that. Very few people spoke English, which was interesting. Like the rest of the countries I visited, like English just was rolled off the tongue with everybody, but the French definitely held on to their, Frenchness, so to speak. but yeah, it's still lefties at the end of the day, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Went over here and saw Notre Dame, of course, the famous cathedral that miraculously just decided to, catch fire back in 2019. And you'll see that they're still doing a bunch of construction around it. You can't go inside. It's all surrounded by a bunch of barbed wire and everything like this. There were armed police all over the place around the big, monuments. Like all of them are rocking their Heckler and Koch G36s and their, sidearms and everything, and their bulletproof vests and things like this. So, they weren't fucking around, around this here, which, was nice at least. But yeah, 4 years later, and this, investigation still ongoing as to, what happened, lit by candle for almost 1,000 years and miraculously catches fire. But, different story for another day. I'm sure diversity had nothing to do with it. Of course not. But yeah, apparently they are going to finish constructing, or the renovations, I should say. Apparently they're going to finish sometime at the end of this decade, which, seems like a lot to, us. But again, like this thing took over 100 years to make the first time. And it's truly like staggering. It's like how big this thing is. I don't really have like any people here in these shots for scale, but this thing is, absolutely massive. Well, I guess you can see like there's some little kids here, but yeah, this thing is just absolutely gargantuan how big these cathedrals and monuments are and such. So yeah, a marvel of human engineering and what made the West so great. Best in the West, of course. So yeah, there's a big statue of Charlemagne that's right outside this outside of the cathedral there. Interesting. I didn't like even recognize him because like in all the other images you see of Charlemagne, he's not as like Germanic, I guess you could say. But yeah, this is very like Germanic representation of him, which I thought was pretty cool. Big bronze statue right there. I'm sure like a bunch of our art and like Gothic and architecture guys in the chat are gonna rip me apart because I'm such a Philistine when it comes to this kind of stuff. But yeah, I could definitely appreciate it. I could definitely appreciate the aesthetic, of art, even though I can't really describe it. I'm just so stupid in this regard. My wheelhouse is elsewhere. But yeah, again, like there's a statue of Alexander. There's lovely, cherry blossoms and things in these gardens. There's a statue of Caesar, which is pretty cool. And Pericles, so many of like the great founders of the West are just on display in these gardens here that you can go and see, which, you'd never really see something like that in the States. So it was interesting to observe. Yeah, another more like gorgeous photos here, of course. I really like this garden right in front of the Louvre here, and this little like pond here, and people like will take their little sailboats out and drive them around and things. And yeah, it's interesting. Again, this is like the back end where I was talking about this giant obelisk that was given to them by the Egyptians, because those of you who know your history will remember that Napoleon did an invasion of Egypt to try and access the Suez Canal, to beat the British to it and such. And there's a bunch of famous stories and such there. So they were gifted an obelisk by the Egyptian king there. So it's set up right there. And then there's Arc de Triomphe in the background. So that's cool. Yeah. And yeah, it was a very nice city, by and large, for sure. I also took a trip by myself. Like I'm one of these guys that I always like to move around, in these places. I don't like to sit in one place for too long. And I checked out the second oldest zoo in the world, which is in Paris. The Menagerie, as they call it. And then which is also partnered with the Natural History Museum that they have there. And there's some really nice gardens there that I went and checked out, obviously. And me being the amateur paleontologist, I had to go check it out, of course. So yeah, very nice gardens. I can understand why people would, sit there and observe like wildlife and such like this. This is like an old picture back in the day of where it used to be in the 1800s. It was founded in 1792, and they used to have like lions and tigers and stuff on display here, and a bunch of artists would come up and paint and everything like this. Like I was saying, the French, very aesthetic people. They also had this. So this is actually the actual taxidermy of this giraffe that they had shipped in. It's called Zarafa, was the name of this giraffe, and it was sent by the king of Sudan in the 1800s. And what they did is they shipped it to Marseille, and then they walked it, from Marseille all the way up for 40 days. They walked it from Marseille to Paris, and then they ended up having this giraffe on display in the Menagerie in downtown Paris. for the rest of its life for 20 years. And there's like a bunch of great stories. And it's like actually like it's kind of like a popular like kids mascot that they have. That there's like an animated movie that's really popular in France about this giraffe. It's kind of like a cultural icon thing, which must have been actually. I mean, it's so foreign for us like Americans to think about because it's just how young our nation is and how developed we are compared to everything else. But it must have been amazing, like people like seeing this giraffe get walked down like Champs-Elysees towards the zoo, like the whole city staring at it and everything. It's like, wow, it's really a wild animal. It's really a giraffe that I could see in person. This otherworldly creature. And they ended up putting it on display in the zoo. So yeah, interesting stuff there for sure. I won't spend too much time on all of the goings on at the zoo and everything like this, because I know that not everyone is obsessed with zoology like myself. But a lot of the old exhibits were still there. Like the same picture like I was showing before, where they had all the big cats and such. They had some leopards and things like this. And as a connoisseur of zoos, I'm a big fan of them. I was interested to see how like I don't know, I guess low security the zoo was, like this is just like the fence right there. It's not even like 4 feet tall, but it's like, oh yeah. Just got animals walking around there, which is nice. So got a picture for tapir, some oryx, guanacos and South American reeds, so it was cool, just waltzing around there, everything like this. Got here a pine marten, a cassowary from Australia, obviously some wallabies, and it's a Suleimani markhor from the Himalayas, so basically a mountain goat and such. Here's a video of these golden lion tamarins, like small little monkeys, running about and things like this. So yeah, it was cool. You'll see these things in zoos all the time, but I never saw such a lively group of them. They were having a lot of fun. So moving on here. Yeah, the biggest attraction they had at this zoo, it wasn't like a super big zoo, kind of small, but they had an Indian gaur, which is like the largest species of bovid on the planet these days. I mean, these things grow up to way over a ton. They're absolutely huge. Even tigers don't fuck with them. So that was cool to see. Obviously, I stopped and spent some time at the reptile house, but anywho, I won't spend too much more time. I'm just going to be here all day, like talking about zoos and wildlife and stuff like this. And I know not everybody's going to be into that. So moving on here. Yeah. So after I checked out the zoo, I went over to the Museum of Natural History. I didn't have too much time. It's actually 6 museums all on this campus, but I didn't have enough time to see all of them. So naturally I picked the Museum of Paleontology. So went over there, saw huge collection of skeletons of animals living and extinct. The first floor of this paleontology museum is all like modern animals, all of them, so like there's like skeletons like rhinos and elephants and whales and lions and tigers and stuff like that, and monkeys and everything. So you can go check out that stuff. Big one of a giraffe, obviously an elephant, whales, Cape buffalo. This is actually kind of cool. This is a rhino that was actually on display at King Louis XVI's estate in Versailles. It ended up dying, and they ended up keeping the skeleton on display here in this museum. So it was kind of cool. But casts of a sperm whale, a blue whale, so it was cool stuff to check out. Obviously, a bunch of birds, so my avian friends were on display there. And then the second floor was all prehistoric life, which obviously a bunch of dinosaurs and prehistoric mammals and things like this. So it was very cool to check out, of course. Where's some highlights here? Yeah, let's see. They had a skeleton with Diplodocus, one of the larger sauropods from the Jurassic period. They're found all over Western United States. And obviously Allosaurus, the most common carnivore of its day. There's a picture of Carnotaurus, meat-eating bull, Cretaceous period from South America. Iguanodon, the second dinosaur ever described, and very, very famous one for paleontology purposes. But yeah, I'll just sit here all day talking about this stuff. I need to move on. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe one of these days, like if I ever get big enough, I might start up like a second YouTube channel with just all like amateur like paleontology stuff, because I just live for this kind of stuff. So all right, moving on. So we also saw the Paris Underground. I don't have any pictures of it on my Twitter, but like the catacombs of old Paris, and it's kind of eerie actually because like during the French Revolution they used that as a morgue. So there's just thousands upon thousands of skeletons and human remains in the underground in the crypts of Paris, and it's like 50 meters down and such, and it's kind of like a whole cave system that you walk through just in the middle of Paris, and it's actually kind of creepy and eerie just like seeing all the skeletons, and they don't touch them like for desecrating the dead and things like this, and it makes me want to be cremated, to be honest. Is the first thing that you think about. But oh man, yeah, it was something. But so after we went to Paris, we hopped on a train and went down to Marseille, which is it was originally a Greek colony founded in the 6th century BC. It was called Marcella at the time. You guys will know this if you know your Greek and Roman history. But yeah, a lot of the old fortifications are still there. Obviously, they've been repurposed and rebuilt through like antiquity, through the Renaissance, and a lot of these fortifications actually saw conflict as recently as World War II. When the Nazis invaded southern France, so there was a bunch of conflicts going on here. But yeah, it's a port city. It was a trade city for the longest period of time. It's actually kind of cool to have this ancient wall that was set up here to guard, against enemy ships coming in and things like this. And that was really interesting to see. Of course, I took a cool shot, the ocean and the sunset going on there. A lot of topless women on beaches in France. That's all I'll say. I love that country's love of vice. I will say, I think they have a more healthy understanding of it than Americans do. Just the casualness of sipping some alcohol in the middle of the day, and I can appreciate that for sure. As I always say, every man needs some vice in his life. Let's keep going on here. Yeah, so also the next day at Marseille, there's this giant cathedral at the top called Notre Dame de la Garde, and it was built in what was it? I think I have it captioned here. Was it 1700s? No, 1800s, 1850. Yeah, it took them 40 years to build. It originally was built on the site of a fort at the top. This is the tallest point in Marseille. It's in the middle of the city here. A very nice cathedral. Here's some views from the top. There's a couple islands off the side here. I'll get to those in a minute here. But yeah, so you're just on the top of this hill overlooking the city, and it's very, very beautiful. Yeah, fantastic shots. Love the Mediterranean and everything like that. God, can't beat those views, man. It was really nice. Climbing all the way up that thing was a chore, though. Yeah. So the whole trip overall, I tracked it. I walked over 100 miles on the entire trip. So I spent majority of my time. It was leg day all the time over there. Here's some pictures of the inside of this church. It's just so beautiful. It took 40 years to build. You don't see like this kind of dedication to the art and the craft, as much anymore these days. It really is something. It's very moving. Like a big ship up here. Obviously, like being a port city for the longest period of time, ship is pretty significant there. Some peacocks up here, which is pretty cool. Obviously a bunch of gold and different architecture and things like this. There's a crypt in the bottom of the church. For like silent contemplation and prayer, which is very, very moving, I would say the least. So yeah, I would totally recommend checking that out if you guys ever go there. So after me and two of my friends checked out this church, we went over to the islands just off of the coast there. I forget the name of all of them. There's like some special like French names for them or whatever. But we hiked this for over 5 hours. All the islands, and we only saw like half of them. But man, were they gorgeous. Yeah, so what's significant about these is that the Romans used these islands as a staging area for their assault on Marseille. Like I was mentioning, it was a Greek colony, and they invaded in 49 BC, and they set up a bunch of fortifications on here and such, and that's where they eventually would launch their attacks, from these islands onto the mainland. And a lot of these forts are, like I mentioned, were still in use during the Second World War. So, and they've also been used to shoot a bunch of movies. Like The Count of Monte Cristo was filmed on this island, if you guys have ever seen that movie. So, but man, just look at the crystal clear, like blue water and such. It was around like maybe mid 70s, low 70s, out there hiking, and but it was fun. We hiked over 10 miles that day. But yeah, just crystal clear blue water, amazing. My Mediterranean blood in me was speaking to me, being back here. It's like, wow, I can see why my people, took to the seas, in ancient times. They just, how could you not? It's just so gorgeous. The white cliffs and the limestone and the beautiful ocean. Yeah, can't beat it, man. So keep walking around here. Yeah, here's some more great shots. of all this. Yeah, beautiful old fortifications here, of course. Well, and it's taking me back. I had a lot of fun there. Yeah, I had a really, really good time. Yeah, here's some of the old forts, fortifications, and barracks and things like this that they used. Um, yeah, there we go. Yeah, some of these ruins have been there for 2,000 years, man, which is crazy to think about. It's just we just have no concept of this in the States, like for how old like our man-made objects are. There's some that you get like out west, like you can see like the Pueblos and like Arizona and Nevada and stuff of like the old like Native Americans, but it's just very, very rare for us to have like a history in this context in the States. So of course, being a history buff, I was loving it. Um, Boy, was this a really cool shot. So this is like a on the side of this fort. They just have like this little fire pit here, and just imagine the stories that were told here by the soldiers and guys who were garrisoning this before, just looking over out to the ocean. Just having locker room talk around the fire must have been amazing to witness. Yeah, this is the shot of a like a bastion, like where they had cannons and machine guns put down at one point. Perfect shot just over the clear blue ocean there. It was something else, man. Except for one of these fucking seagulls took a shit on me and I was really pissed, but other than that, yeah, it was pretty fun. Yeah, gorgeous shots all around. I think one of the things I also wanted to mention, I guess about like safety and everything like this, when I was abroad, I don't know. I definitely kept my head a little bit more on a swivel than I would in the United States, simply because of the fact that I wasn't armed over there. In the States, I'm carrying every single day, but over here, obviously, just wasn't an option for me. So definitely kept my head on a swivel a little bit more. In Paris, 2 guys in our entourage got pickpocketed. Diversity is our strength, of course. I was kind of just begging for one of those guys to try to pull that shit with me because it wouldn't have flied at all. But yeah, definitely like watch yourself. Like pickpocketing is such a weird crime over here in the States. It just doesn't happen. People just rob you. They'll just do like armed robbery, and stuff like that. So I don't know. It just seems a little bit more dignified, like an armed robbery as opposed to just like swiping something out of somebody's pocket. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's just my Americanism in me. But yeah, so definitely keep your head on a swivel a little bit, especially in the major towns. But Marseille, I didn't know this, but apparently it's the human trafficking capital of mainland Europe. So I guess it makes sense, still a trade city. But yeah, we had some good food there, and I generally felt safe, like overall, just because, like, I know how to conduct myself and not do anything fucking stupid, like just immediately like flaunt wealth or, like one of the things I do, and I just do this in American cities too, is like I'm just never walking around with headphones in. It just sets you up, like it just sets up a target on your back. You just got to have your head on a swivel with things. Look people in the eye. Kind of give like a little bit of a stern face that let people know like not to fuck with you. And like I was confident enough in my own abilities walking around, and I spent most of this trip rolling solo. Like I was with friends only for the front end of this trip for like 5 days, and the rest of it I was just flying solo. I mean, I was obviously meeting up with a bunch of our based friends like abroad and such, but other than that, like there was a significant stretch of this trip where I was just by myself, in foreign lands, and I was more than confident in my abilities to stay safe. So don't be worried too much about that. Let's roll up here. Oh yeah, I had to take a picture when I was in France. I did go to a McDonald's, and I had to take a picture of a Royale with cheese. For those of you who are Pulp Fiction fans, it absolutely is true. They do call it a Royale with cheese over there. And I will say this: one of the first things I picked up when I was in Europe across the entire board, even at like a shitty fast food place like a McDonald's, all of their food, and I mean literally all of it, is better than American food. Every last bit of it. I'm convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, at this point, that American food is just pure poison. They put shit in our food. It's toxic. It is so bad for you. I'm 100% convinced of this. After this point. So this is absolutely going to be, a pet project of mine moving forward through organizations like the Old Glory Club. That I'm just going whole hog on this one. I was already big on killing your own food and growing your own food already, being like a big game hunter, but I'm just so convinced of it in the American context. Like our food is poison. So yeah, definitely be watching it. Definitely be watching that stuff. I was honestly just shocked. Everything was better. Across the entire board, even like little snacks and things, like even fast food. So, yeah, definitely be watching that. All right, moving on here. So after we spent some time in Marseille, I took off and headed over to Frankfurt, Germany. I don't have any pictures on my Twitter. I'm gonna eventually do a thread on that because I visited the Natural History Museum over there, the Streckenberg Natural History Museum in downtown Frankfurt, and that was amazing. That was one of my favorite museums I've ever been to. Had some exquisite dinosaur specimens and displays on at that museum, and I was sure to get there early to beat the rush. I was the first person in that museum at 9 o'clock in the morning, so that was something. One other thing I noticed about Frankfurt and such, and just like Europe in general, on the trains and everything, is that you can definitely tell that they each have their own very distinct architecture, very distinct. Like a German building is very, very different from a French building. And you can pick up on it like right away. The other thing about Frankfurt is I was not aware of this, but apparently it is a hotspot for Antifa activity. It is a huge Antifa town. When I was walking around downtown Frankfurt, I saw Antifa graffiti and like Save Trans Lives sprayed on almost every single street corner. I was amazed. Apparently it's a huge presence over there. So definitely need to keep your head on a swivel over there if you're one of our guys. Actually, let me take a look at the chat here really quick. Let's see. Oh yeah. The most handsome man in Chicago is in the chat. Yeah, it was fun, Chad. And of course, I'll get to the tales of myself and Jack Napier pretty soon because obviously met him over there. Governor, good to see you, my friend. Fan of the Blue Whales, are you? Yeah, they're something. I mean, I'm always gonna be part and partial to my dinosaurs, of course. But yeah, the blue whales are pretty cool. They have a whole skeleton of one in the British Museum of Natural History, but I'll get to that when I get to that. Let's see. Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. Kingdom of Inland. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It might actually be that museum that's in that shop, but yeah, you're right. It's very, very similar. I do know what you're talking about though. I thought it was very pretty. Marseille, I thought it was a very nice city. But everyone was just, it was interesting. Like all the other Europeans I talked to, they all complain about how shitty it is. Like it's a shithole city and stuff. And I don't know, maybe by European standards, but I liked it a lot. I found it very beautiful. So that's just me. Yes. I was baptized Catholic and Greek Orthodox, so I got a double dosage. Hey, Maven, good to see you, man. Yeah, I'll get to the stories of what we were doing and such, walking around London and such. But yeah, Maven's a cool dude. It was fun to meet him. In Frankfurt, I don't know. Funny enough, I guess I can address the train issue right now. So, trains, we don't have them in the States, like barely at all, unless you go like on the East Coast. We don't really have them. We have them for like freight and moving like coal and shit across the country. But as for like transportation in America, the car is the mode of travel. And it always is. And getting over to Europe and realizing how they do everything by train or subway was very, very different for me. It definitely took me a couple days in France to figure out the train situation. And then when I took a train from Marseille back up to Paris so I can get my connecting train from Paris to Frankfurt, I did not realize this, but on your ticket, when it says transfer, I was under the impression it was transfer trains. No, it's transfer train stations. So there's like 6 different train stations in Paris. I was not aware of this. I'm looking at my ticket, trying to figure out where the fuck I am and where I'm supposed to go. And I'm talking to this one guy, one of the French like workers at this joint, speaking in broken English, trying to figure out where the hell I'm supposed to go. He's like, "Oh no, you gotta go to the other train station." I'm like, "Oh shit, there's a different train station." I walk outside, and I ended up getting swindled by some French Algerian dude, who clearly he could tell me looking around on my phone, knowing I didn't know what the fuck was going on. He's like, "Oh, where you got to go?" I was like, "Oh, I got to get to this train station." He's like, "Well, you don't have enough time to take an Uber." And he was kind of right, getting through like French traffic and stuff in an Uber wouldn't have done it. So he ended up taking my bag and everything and hooking me up on his motorcycle or his moped. And we were just bobbing and weaving through French traffic. It was actually kind of a cool experience. And he got me to the other train station. And he got me there in time. Unfortunately, he charged me 95 euros to do it, which I was like, fuck you, man, fucking swindler. But he did get me there in time. So I think, I thank him for that. But yes, I got on my train from Paris, went over to Frankfurt. chilled in Frankfurt for about 36 to 48 hours, stayed in a hotel downtown, and did a little bit of pickup when I was there, not too much. I guess I could comment on that as well. The women across the board, in Europe were very, very attractive, by and large. Even like, the chicks in England, I know you like the English get a bad rep for their women, but there were some attractive ones I saw walking around in London for sure. Right off the bat, I was amazed how little fat people were over there in Europe, all across the board. I tweeted this out, but when I flew back home and I landed in Dulles Airport, in Washington D.C. before I got my connecting flight back home, I saw more fat people in Dulles Airport than the entire trip abroad in Europe. It was crazy to me. Just everybody is just so much more thin than Americans are over there. So obviously, it was very aesthetically pleasing. Heading over there and not having your, eyes, be immediately, destroyed by, the armies of fat people over here. So that was nice. Let's see now. So I took a train from Frankfurt, and then I went up to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and then I took a connecting train from there out to visit our good friend and friend of the channel, Mr. Jack Napier. And Jack was a very nice host. It was good to finally meet him in person. It was different because, we've just been podcasting together for so long and talking like online for forever. It just felt like, it just already felt like I knew the guy, for the longest period of time. So, but Jack and I, the timing ended up being perfect because when I was there, it was Liberation Day. And so for the Dutch, it's like their celebration of being liberated from, the Nazis in World War II. So it's a big celebration. They have festivals going on. Everyone's out drinking and partying. And Jack and I ended up doing, 6 or 7 hours of pickup and cold approach and hopping around bars and such like this. And man, it was great. It was very refreshing to have a wingman who's extremely switched on, knows what he's doing. And we were just bouncing off each other like crazy, like we're making jokes, we're, having a bunch of drinks, we're approaching girls. We had so many good memories, going on there. We got shot down a bunch. We had some good conversations. We had some good drink. We had some good food. We just had such a ball. We walked around, Jack showed me around his hometown and things like this. And it was really nice. And he was a very generous host, put me up in his place, and he didn't have to do that. So, yes, Mr. Napier, I look forward to our next meeting. My friend, maybe he's in the chat. Actually, he's probably asleep by now. He likes to go to bed early, and it's early in the morning over there in, the Netherlands right now. So yes, Jack, good friend. Glad I met him for sure. So after I left with Jack and we had our pickup extravaganza, and actually, if you guys want to hear more about our escapades and all of our approaches and some of the funny stories from there, go to his channel and listen to the episode of Red Evening we did. I think he called it the morning after or the day after or something. It was like 2 weeks ago. We did an episode of Red Evening with him and Rob Says, like fresh from Jack's place, which was kind of funny, because like I was just off screen, just sitting to the left of him, which is funny because, you watch the podcast so many times and it's like, oh yeah, I'm there, just can't see me on screen, got to keep my pretty face hidden. Yeah. So if you guys want to hear more about the escapades that we had, go listen to it on his channel. We had a fun time. All right. So now gets to a very interesting part of the trip. After I left Jack, I headed over to Antwerp in Belgium. And I met up with a family member there and stayed at their apartment there. And as we went out for drinks that night in downtown Antwerp, I noticed this and kind of learned it the hard way. They really don't like Americans over there, which I guess makes sense now that I think about it. Being Belgium is the capital of the European Union, obviously that's going to be the, like ground zero for American hatred over there. So walking out of this bar at 2:00 in the morning. Well, let me go back a little bit. So we'd already been, getting some good food and walking around from bars for quite some time. And we were in this one bar and we already had, several drinks at this point, but these 4 Dutch guys come in and they're maybe in the like late 20s, early 30s, things like that. And we ended up sharing a couple drinks with these guys, and everyone's getting kind of sauced at this point. Here's the other thing, Europeans can just put away their drink way, way stronger than Americans can. Like that, all of them could just drink us under the table easily, especially the Brits. Like when I got to England, I was shocked like how much alcohol people consume over there. It's nuts. Like and I'm a pretty decent drinker myself, like by American standards. But when I got over there, oh my God, every last one of these guys can drink me under the table. It was a culture shock in that regard. But anywho, so Antwerp, Belgium, 2 o'clock in the morning, having some drinks on a Friday night with people. Oh no, it was Saturday night. Yeah, it was Saturday night, and talking to these Dutch guys, and one of them says, "Hey, Hawk, do you want a cigarette?" I'm like, yeah, I'll take a cigarette. When in Europe, right? So we're going outside, we're having ourselves a smoke, and everybody else is, enjoying themselves and such. And naturally, one of these guys, starts asking me about America, about American politics, and I kind of had this coming. Should have been a little bit more careful. I was pretty careful the rest of this trip, but I figured, hey, these guys seem pretty cool. We're roughly the same age. They seem to be all right. We've shared a couple drinks together. I think maybe I can actually, talk a little bit more candidly than I normally would here. And naturally, they start asking me questions about the Donald. And of course, I said, yeah, I liked him. We made a lot of money under Donald Trump and things like this. And naturally, these guys were, in their European bitchy manner, were complaining about, America and such. But one of the guys had the audacity to thank me for paying for all their military. And I didn't take too kindly to that, and he didn't either. And a couple other slurs were exchanged, between the two of us. And this guy decided to break a Heineken bottle on the side of this bar and try to stab me with it. So that was interesting. It's kind of like one of those moments where you're just sitting there and you're kind of just like dumbfounded, like this is actually happening. You're like, really? This guy's going to try and fight me right now over a couple slurs that were spoken. I thought we were kind of being adults here. We just shared a bunch of drinks and everything. I thought we were all cool. And this guy ended up having two of his buddies like hold him back and everything. And then the whole bar staff came running out and everything. And to be honest, like, it's definitely not the first bar scuffle I've ever been into, and certainly won't be the last. It was kind of just funny. It was one of those circumstances where it's just like, I'm just sitting there smoking the cigarette, puffing on it, just watching this ensue. This guy getting held back by his buddies. He's stumbling over himself because he's so fucking drunk, and he's, cussing me out, cussing out the American and everything like this. And, I was just kind of sitting there kind of casually laughing at the whole situation. It was like, really, it's like one of those moments like when we talk about online, where we talk about like guys with no frame and the shit they do. It literally was like the living embodiment of guys with no frame and the shit they do. It's just like, okay, you're gonna, throw fists and break bottles and try to stab like, foreigners in your country because like you guys are having disagreements over shit. So whatever. So that guy ended up getting shuffled out and kicked out, and we ended up walking around to other bars and red light district and everything till like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was beat. I was fucking exhausted after that. It kind of was like, we talk about the ashes, it definitely was the ashes walking around the red light district in Antwerp at 4 o'clock in the morning, seeing, woman upon woman like dressed out in lingerie, just plastering themselves in front of glass containers, just offering themselves up for like, $35. Like, holy shit, this truly is like the ashes. Absolutely. And of course, like every single guy is like walking across the street. They're all drunk. There's a bunch of migrants. There's a bunch of, like ne'er-do-wells and everything like this. And honestly, like funny enough, I was actually rereading Bronze Age Mindset on this trip. So I was rereading it as I was like on trains and such going across the country. And there's a section in Bronze Age Mindset where he talks about like the underworld and the underclass and the undercity and everything like that. So it's like, I definitely understand what BAP is getting at now after walking around like a European red light district. Because again, like in the States, it's just not so open. We don't have those over there. But so that was the crisis in Belgium, a shithole country that I will never be returning to ever. They don't like Americans there. That the train station in Brussels was an absolute fucking nightmare. I hated it. I hated every minute of me being in Belgium, and I definitely will not be going back. So yeah, it was the only bad experience of all the countries over there was in Belgium. I liked Germany. I liked France. I liked the Netherlands. I liked England. I despised Belgium. I will not be going back. So I took one of the trains from Brussels to London, went through the underground, through the tunnel, under the English Channel, things like this. Went surprisingly quick. These trains like fucking fly, man. Like I took the Thalys train from Amsterdam, or no, from Amsterdam to Antwerp, and that fucking thing flies at 300 kilometers an hour, which is what, like a buck 50, buck 25, something like that, miles per hour. Yeah, that thing was flying. It was crazy how fast the thing goes. Like looking out the window, you get like motion sickness. It was very, very weird. But anywho, so I got to merry old England, where our good friend of the show, Mark, not so obvious, picked me up from the train station, and he had to show me around the English countryside. And to the English, I must say, your country is extremely beautiful. I loved it. I loved every moment of the countryside. Here's the white cliffs, on the southern coast there, to the sunset. Just absolutely gorgeous. We have nothing like this in the States. Like look at the mist coming down from the green hills, down into the ocean. Like, yeah, very, very beautiful country, to say the least. I understand why Tolkien got his inspiration for the Shire and everything through the rolling green hills and everything like this, the English countryside. I can understand why the English have such a love of home and are just very like homely, kind of they're hobbits, they're Shire folk, they like to stay around and enjoy their countryside. And I could definitely understand it, after seeing it for myself. Yeah, like these rolling hills, like we get them in America, but they're not green like this. They're either completely covered with trees or they're much more arid and rocky, like you see out west. Like look at these. These are all like paragliders, going around. Apparently they have a lot of these clubs over there, these paragliding clubs, that people just go out and, get their little gliders out and jump off these hills and everything like this. And apparently they can go for quite some time. So yeah, very interesting, very cool. So yeah, the English, you have a very gorgeous countryside, and I envy you to great regard. So after our good friend Mark put me up for the night, and we went drinking that night as well. And my God, I again, like I was saying, I wish I had a picture of it on my Twitter right here, but I have a bunch of these like saved on my phone. I just haven't been bothered to do threads of them yet. But the English pub culture is very, very interesting for sure. I enjoyed it thoroughly. It's just such a foreign concept, like compared to an American, where we just have like bars, like sports bars everywhere and such. And sometimes you'll have like the motorcycle bars and kind of like there's like a bit of like a saloon culture like out west in certain areas, but it's nothing like this. Like the pub culture in the United Kingdom is totally different. Like I definitely understand, like the context of, famous thinkers and philosophers and politicians and, poets and people just sitting down in these pubs. They're very aesthetically pleasing. Like they've got fantastic art, and you could tell they're very well maintained. And it just seems like you could just feel the masculinity coursing through the walls, almost like when you walk into these places. Like you can imagine people sitting in corners, smoking their pipes and talking, deep conversations on politics or art or whatever, or philosophy. And yeah, it's very, very interesting. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I like the pub culture for sure. I wish we had something like that in the States. Very, very cool. I went to multiple pubs when I was there with all of our based friends, across the board. And I enjoyed my experience at every last one of them. So, and also, like I was mentioning before, surprisingly cheap. I mean, me getting pints of Guinness over there for £3 is, ridiculous compared to over here in the States. I mean, I'm paying like $6 or $7, for a glass of Guinness over here. So that sucked. But yeah, so Mark, treated me very nice dinner, treated me to nice views of the countryside, treated me to a nice night at the pub, and then we spent the day in London the next day. Of course, this is a Monday, and the coronation was on Saturday of the king. Long live the king. So they still had a bunch of pictures and everything, and the flags were all up of all like the flags of the empire and everything, and all the the countries that are still part of the Commonwealth, which I was not aware of, but there's a lot still. So they had like a bunch of flags from like all over the world and such. And then me and my good friend Maven, he's in the chat earlier. I don't know if he's still here, but we went and checked out the V&A, the Victoria Albert Museum. It's like this great big art museum that they have in London there. I got a shitload more pictures of these, but I just had to take a picture of this one. It's like, ladies, what's stopping you from looking like this? I had to appreciate it. But yeah, so again, I'm kind of a Philistine when it comes to art, but it was a huge museum, like massive. Like Maven and I are walking around this thing. It's like a maze, like just room upon room upon room of famous like art pieces and such. Like they had a whole room dedicated to Raphael, the famous painter, of course, so giant, paintings of his were all over the building here. I'm censoring this picture because I don't want Susan to, take down the damn stream because, boobs. But Let's see now. Were there any other photos I had of here? Yeah. The last couple I actually tweeted out here. I've been meaning to do a couple threads on this. I just haven't gotten around to do it. But yeah, here's a shot of Frankfurt from the hotel here. So Frankfurt is also where they have the European Central Bank, which I was not aware of at the time, but I guess that makes sense. But yeah, so you have like some kind of like old style, like German buildings in here mixed in with like the newer kind of stuff, which I guess makes sense. Here's another picture of the white cliffs in south of England, which is, yeah, amazing. Nothing else like it. But so after that day of walking around the, downtown London, seeing Big Ben, seeing Westminster, seeing, all the other major attractions like Piccadilly and Hyde Park and everything like this. And, and after we went to that art museum, I kind of turned it in early for the night. And then the next day I went out to the Lotus Eaters and I spent, 6 or 8 hours with all the Lotus Eaters guys, except Carl. Carl was avoiding me. Which makes sense because every time we appeared on streams together, he and I've always bashed heads. But no, Carl and Sargon and the whole team should be very, very proud of themselves. For what they've built. They've done a fantastic job at the Lotus Eater studio, and there's a lot of things that all of us in these right-wing circles can learn from those guys because they've actually taken something from the online and they put it into the real. So good for them. And so naturally, we went over to a pub. We hung out for several hours after that. Got some good drinks. Ate some good food. Had some amazing conversations. It was good to meet all those guys. Met Harry and John and Josh and Stelios and and Connor and the whole 9 yards. Callum, Dan. All those guys. They're doing some great work over there. So a shout out to all of them. And so that was my second to last day abroad, and the final last day, which was Wednesday. And that day I checked out the British Museum of Natural History. I spent 6.5 hours there because it's a massive museum with many, many sections. I was excited to go check out their dinosaur museum section, but unfortunately I was left pretty disappointed. Of course they have the oldest dinosaur bones in the entire world there. The first ones that were ever discovered, were classified by the English, so they have those, but apparently they don't display them. They've got them all, stashed away in the back, because it's still like a huge museum that's used by, a bunch of, universities and everything like this. And funny enough, I tried to, sneak into the area and try and weasel my way in there and charm my way, with my credentials and everything, but it didn't work. I needed an appointment. Funny enough, I got through the first batch, like the first person at the door, I got past them, but the second one, they weren't having me. So I was, a little upset about that one because I would have loved to check out their fossil rooms and open some of their drawers and see some of their pieces that they have back there. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. But so I logged around the rest of the museum. What they did have on display, which I thought was really, really cool, they had a whole collection of marine reptiles, which England is very, very famous for discovering, particularly during the Jurassic period. So there's a lot of plesiosaurs and pliosaurs and ichthyosaur skeletons on display there, which were really, really cool to see. Not so many dinosaur ones. I guess they, don't really like their dinosaur skeletons there, sadly. But yeah, and then I checked out the rest of that whole museum, and it was fun. I enjoyed my time there. I enjoyed my time at these natural history museums and checking out things. A couple of really standout pieces at that museum, though, they had obviously a lot of Darwin stuff because it was Charles Darwin's museum that he operated out of, and the campus and everything back in the day. And so there's a lot of his discoveries were there, his journals, a lot of specimens that he collected himself were there. There was a first edition copy of his book on the origin of species that was on display there, which is really cool to see. There were two other personal favorites of mine that were on display in that museum. One of them was the original fossil of the very first bird, Archaeopteryx, is on display in that museum. And it's a very, very amazingly preserved specimen of the first bird, avian dinosaur. It's so well preserved that even its feathers remain indented into the fossil and the skeleton, so you can actually see where dinosaurs turned into birds, and which is always an interesting topic and study of mine. Obviously, red hawk, I'm a fan of birds of prey, raptors, of course. And birds, there are more species of them now than there are mammals and reptiles. So birds are actually the second most successful vertebrate on the planet today. Fishes obviously have the most, and then you have birds are second. And there are thousands upon thousands of species of birds on every single continent and every single environment. So the evolution of birds is always very interesting to read about, especially considering that they came from carnivorous avian dinosaurs. So that's always nice to read about. So yeah, they had a specimen there, the first ever Archaeopteryx fossil ever discovered, and was very well preserved, which I thought was really cool. And then the second one, they had the most complete skeleton of a Stegosaurus ever found is on display in this museum. Stegosaurus is my favorite dinosaur. It is nothing else looks like it, alive today or since. It's just so goofy looking. 4 big spikes on the tail, and plates ridged along the back. This specimen that they have there, they called it Sophie after the person that discovered it, and it's actually a juvenile. It's not even an adult. It's a subadult. But it was very well preserved. Like I think it was only like a dozen bones were actually missing from the skeleton, so it was almost entirely complete, which is pretty cool. So yes, those were kind of the standout specimens for myself. I really, really like that dinosaur. And of course, I picked up some cool souvenirs and such from the museum. And then to cap off that final day of me being there abroad, I did a meetup with the Basket Weavers in London, and maybe 12 to 15 guys showed up at this one pub in downtown London, led by Right Honorable Fez. If he's in the chat, he did a fantastic job of hosting everybody there. It was an excellent setting. We were there for several hours. We actually closed down the bar. We got there at like 7 and we closed it down at 11. So we were there for a good 5 hours. And, if you guys have ever been to any IRL meetups with our based friends, you'll know about the conversations that go down there. They're very intellectually stimulating. If anybody in the chat was also there at that meetup, I've said this. I said this to Fez when I was leaving. Everybody there passed the physiognomy test. Everyone there was sharp. They were well dressed. They were well behaved. They conducted themselves very well. They were very intellectual. It's just very white pilling to go to these IRL events and meet like so many of our guys that are really, really switched on and very, very based. And it's fantastic. We have a very bright future ahead of us in this movement. This I have no doubt. So it was good to see more of our based friends over there. In the future, when I go across the pond again, I'd like to meet way more of our friends. Some of our schedules just didn't mesh up, and obviously I didn't really travel much outside of the London area. So, but next time I go over there, I want to spend almost like 2 weeks just in like the United Kingdom itself. I want to head up to Scotland, go see Columba, and everybody, and go look around the the fjords and the forests, and check out Ireland, go visit like the Guinness distillery, and many other things I want to do. I wanted to check out Stonehenge, didn't have the opportunity to do it, and obviously see much more of our base friends. Like I'd like to meet AA over there, Time Stealer, or in all of our other based friends that we have over there. I want to meet them all. I want to meet all of our friends. I've yet to have a bad interaction of meeting somebody offline, like somebody from the internet that I associate with in real life. I've yet to have a horrible experience. So everyone is everyone's been pretty great, well behaved, very intellectually stimulating. Everybody's like on point, so for sure. Let's take a look in the chat here before I wrap up for the evening. Let's see. Yes, diversity certainly is Paris' strength, of course. I guess that's one thing. Last thing I'll comment on here is that I definitely felt the most diverse. Well, I'll say this: London was by far the gayest city I've ever been to. It is like that city is just subversion ground zero. Like going around all the undergrounds and the tubes, for the London lines on the trains. It's just nonstop like propaganda, leftism on every single poster, every single wall. Some of the trains were painted in like pride flag colors, and it's just like, it's just horrible. Just the gayest city I've ever been to by far. And definitely the most diverse, even by American standards. Like London is like extremely diverse city. But other than that, I don't know. I try not to get too caught up into like the politics and everything as I was like traveling about places, because I didn't want it to ruin like the whole experience of it. But like the feeling I got from Europe, like in general, like just across the entire board, is just the imitation of something gone. Like it's something they want to recapture, as opposed to I do think that we still have energy over here in America, especially from like, certain parts of the country, like the South and the West, like there's definitely still like American spirit is very much alive and well. And Europe, I don't know. It just feels like it's, preserved in small pockets by certain groups of people. It just didn't feel like the average citizen like was, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. I don't know. I'm going to write about it for next week for Old Glory Club, and I'm going to be able to put my thoughts down more coherently in there. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, so good gathering all around. Let me check the rest of the chat here, actually. Let's see. No, I did not. Yeah, the Royal Armory. That sounds cool. Yeah, no, there's just so much to see and so much to do. And like I said, it was already kind of like spread thin on this trip as it is. But yeah, I would like to, check out a bunch of cool stuff like that. The Royal Armory, that sounds cool. There was actually a museum dedicated to hunting in Paris, but I ended up doing the natural history one instead. So if I'm ever back that way, I'd like to go check that out. That'd be kind of cool. If you want to understand the Brits, go to Portugal, or they're on their worst behavior. I guess, Portugal is a place I'd like to visit. I know BAP has very, very good reviews of Madrid, like in Spain. So obviously I'd like to check out Spain. I'd like to see like the Basque region, like in northern Spain and such. Like this trip, I spent most of my time like just around like the major cities. The countryside was kind of rare. The most experience I got out of it was just traveling like by train, like to and fro places. But yeah, I'd like to spend more time in the countryside. Like I would love to see like some like World War I and World War II like battlefields, like in like rural France and such, like in the trenches and things. I think that would be really, really cool. But yeah, I think this trip I definitely I tried to tackle it in the way I tackle like American trips. Like I like to spread myself thin in America and like to haul ass. And you can't really do that in Europe. Like the beauty in Europe really is like in the history of things. And in the history of things, you have to slow down and you have to go to like individual places and individual areas and spend a lot of time there. In America, the beauty is in the land, so like you want to go fast, you want to go far, you want to see as much of it as possible. Cause like the beauty is in just seeing the land, cause like there isn't as much history over there, like it's a relatively new country, it's not even 250 years old yet. So, yeah, it was a good like proof of concept going on this trip and knowing that I could do it. But for next time, I know what I can and can't do and what I want to and what I would change, what I would adjust. So, but yes. And then then obviously I flew home the next day and was super, super jet lagged, which is why I didn't have a show on here last week. But yeah, so it was a fun trip. Thank you for everyone who put me up and showed me around. I did not have a single bad experience with, anyone I met like IRL. All of our guys are pretty based and we got a good collection and network of tens, so to speak, all across the world. So if you guys want to do like basket weaving stuff, definitely show up to it. I haven't had like a bad experience yet by any of the ones I've been up to, like in Europe or in America. I haven't had a bad experience yet. So definitely do it. And check the chat last time. Yeah. All the American beer that we have over here, like, the Bud Lights and the Miller Lights and everything like that. People drink their light beer, but, liquor is also popular over here. Obviously, like Kentucky bourbon and whiskey and Canadian whiskey and things like that. Those are really popular over here. And honestly, like, if you want to get drunk, that's what you drink, because like the IPAs are like, they're catching on over here, like the stronger beer and such. But when I was talking to the British guys, talking to them about like their ciders and, their other ales and such, they're drinking, they're up to like 8 or 9%. I'm like, holy shit. Like, how do you drink these things, guys? Like, I mean, one of those beers over here for me is like a sipper. I got to drink it like over like the course of an hour, but I was shocked. I saw on multiple occasions, multiple guys in England just down an entire pint of Guinness in one go. I was like, holy shit, you guys are a different breed, for sure. I mean, I could put away shots, but drinking that much beer that quickly, it's like, my God, like where am I going to put it? It's weird, but all right. That is the roundup, the after action report of the, European trip. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I will definitely be back. I'll be checking out other areas, in the future, but I had a fun time. And I, once again, thank you to everyone who showed me around, everyone who put me up. It was very, very fun indeed. So, all right. Next week, Man's Hour, I'm thinking I'm going to change the day we host the show. I think we're going to switch it from Thursdays to Wednesdays. I'm having a new like a conflict like scheduling thing is coming up, so I might have to start switching the show to Wednesdays. But watch this space, watch Twitter for updates on that. But other than that, check out the Old Glory Club, check out the Substack, check out the Twitter, and check out the Culture Warriors playlist. There's a lot of like really sleeper like bits of information and nuggets of information in there for you guys to pick up on. And I really enjoy doing that podcast because it's three guys that are all relatively the same age from very different backgrounds, but we're all switched on to the RP space. And it's fun when we can just have normal locker room talk, three guys bouncing ideas back and forth. And we just have nuggets of like really good information in there, as well as just having a fun time, So definitely check those out. They need to get way more traction than they do. There's some amazing moments. And it's also generally hilarious too. Three guys just making fun of each other the whole time and having good tips as like how we're handling the women in our respective areas. So definitely tune into that. All right, guys. Thank you for coming by, and we'll see you next time.